By way of introduction to this second segment, we introduce two ideas. On the screen you should see two headings, Noah's death as a date conversion pair, and anticipatory geology. Noah's death is expressed as a row of 5 columns sliced from a spreadsheet. In the anticipatory geology section we have a real example of the date pairing from a paper discussing geology post the famous and well-known Grenville orogeny. You will see 1.083 billion years ago is 3447 BC. We have a spreadsheet application of a binary chop to produce this. If you are unfamiliar with the concept of a binary chop, often used in computing, then I would refer you to a wiki visualization of the binary search algorithm where 7 is the target value. The following desktop animation has a number of features that should be kept in mind as the animation proceeds. Firstly, the variable T generates a pair of coordinates. On the leftmost column the radiometric, stratigraphic, and on the right today's common usage or orbital. When a copy-paste of the T.E line is inserted into the text of a paper or shown on screen, what the readers see is as follows. In the leftmost cell either a general number format, often equaling millions of years ago, or the same number expressed as a power of 10. The next left column contains the T variable value, the cell being manipulated to generate a coordinate set, in the animation. The inner right column is the number of unexpired years of the zero-point energy growth, measured by Planck's constant as it now is. The rightmost cell contains the BC date expressed as a number line entity, either with or without a decimal portion. Occasionally we express a date as the previous year -1 plus the remainder of the decimal converted to Julian months and days. The surrounding or background cells of the spreadsheet calculation line give the reader a rough idea of how modern history relates to geologic activity. This is quite revolutionary. The actual binary process is usually undertaken with a result in mind. For example, we may want to know what is the radiometric date, or the geologic circumstances, obtaining at a certain Julian-style date. Further, we may also know something of the paleontology of a certain place and therefore a radiometric time, so we want to know what was the human circumstances at that time. Do human footprints found at a certain site, in conjunction with dinosaur prints, show a time relationship that confirms the dinosaur-human connection? Was the Dorchester Bell a pre-flood artifact? Or was it early post-flood? Now we go to definitions. While the animation chops to the target of 175 million years ago, which closely corresponds to the start of our early kings sequence of Hathor, Iri Hor, Ka, Horus Ahar, Jur, Jet and Den, we shall clarify a word meaning. Pre-Dynasticism, as a concept, covers the period from the Deluge to the Archaic period. The gods and demigods, listed in Weddell's Menatho, occupy the period from about 30 years before the flood to the end of the Old Manathonic First Dynasty. We can therefore now place the date of 3032 BC, previously referred to, into an historical context. We identify, in the following animation, this particular year as a pre-Archaic period year, falling in the reigns of these 4 kings, Osiris, of whom we might say 3047 was his coronation year, but his CUTSM 70 is from 3046 BC to 2976 BC, see purple block on screen. Manco Capac I, the Nimrod of the Bible, and that of Wana Kahui Pirua of the Peruvian line of kings. Maradzi of the Arakan people, who are currently part of the Myanmar-Burma nation, and identified by Dr. Hay as Nimrod. His years are given as 3048 BC to 3016 BC. And finally Enmer Ka, identified by David Roll as Nimrod of Uruk I (-3117 to -3016). From Wikipedia, Pangaea was a supercontinent that existed during the late Paleozoic and early Mesozoic eras. It assembled approximately 335 million years ago, and it began to break apart about 175 million years ago. The 245 million years ago, discussed in the previous segment of this video, approximates the midpoint of Pangaea's geologic existence. On your screen is the diagram of the Babel period tectonics. This is due to work of Chris Scotties originally and is beautifully illustrated by Ron Blakey and others. The breakup year of Pangaea, converted, is -2994 to -2995. Remarkably, this coincides with the rise of the early Egyptian kings. A pan of these kings follows, and the following archaic rulers, as represented in a spreadsheet, shows the earliest kings can be portrayed as a series of articulated CUTSM 70s. Note about the diagrams, the Mohorovic discontinuity only liquefies sufficiently to allow the Atlantic Ocean to form from the post-Pangaea waterway, circa -2934 or at the Chicxulub asteroid swarm impact. The period prior to the Archaic was essentially characterized by the life of Noah. About 2983 BC, Noah began to slow down. According to Richard Lynch, in his work on the Travels of Noah, the patriarch became ill in his latter years. From age 778 years, to his death in -2977 at age 784 years, it appears he passed rule to others. It is interesting to note that in 1901 William M. F. Petrie published a set of plates which included an inscribed ivory, found among rubble in Nama's tomb, depicting an elderly Asiatic priest. Since there is strong evidence that there was close contact between Egypt and Mesopotamia during Nama's reign, we would suggest this figure depicted on the ivory was in fact Noah and that Nama had a close association with him.
The body of the presentation. In this final segment, confronted by a broken chain of evidence, as set out in the following presentation, we will attempt to show that what has been asserted, established and illustrated so far applies right from the outset of Egyptian kingship, and consequently down through 2900 years of dynastic history, as a pattern of bureaucratic functioning or precedent. All of this will be tied together in one example of kingship, that of Menes. The context of this new beginning for Egypt is contested by the Palermo stones record of Nama. However, Egyptian kingship, generally speaking, followed a 350-year period following the flood, where no king ruled but Noah presided over widespread colonization, and Nimrod governed, in a council, thus building the first democracy. See Noah Kramer. We believe, as just intimated, there is a conspiracy at a high level to remove the anchors, both aft and fore, of the period which we have conceptualized in pre-dynasticism. This is such an important understanding that we may almost say many will have to exercise faith to overcome the attempted undoing it invokes. We commence this journey with a second-best aft anchor. Ibid. Quote, the shoulder ages of 940 to 825 million years ago may derive from the porphyry phase of Pikes Peak granite, unquote, which aligns us with the -3327 to -3326 deluge year, almost exactly, or 825.135 million years ago, as we see immediately following. T column 1 equals 940 million years ago, and coordinates with column 4 -3380.5 orbital years ago. T column 1 equals 825 million years ago, and coordinates with column 4 -3325.9 orbital years ago, day 23 of year after deluge, or T column 1 equals 825.135 million years ago coordinates with column 4 -3326 orbital years ago, day 1 of year after deluge, that is, its start of year. See Genesis. Again, the last flood-affected radiometric clock is reset on or just before day 1 of the quote 601st unquote year of Noah's life. Some 56 days later the ark was exited to a new world. In real life the aft anchor would be unimpeachable. The Dorchester Bell exactly proves America's place in the first tranche of Noachian colonizations. In so doing, it is the archaeological gift needed to tie Noah to the Neoproterozoic, and its ZPE-corrected orbital date of 3327 BC. We only have left reports in the journal Scientific American from the time of discovery. The bell itself has been dumped at sea from a barge many years ago. As one U.S. vice president might have said, it was an inconvenient truth, one that would have blown evolution out of the water. As it is, we cannot easily take the ancient records of demigods and plug them in to get a 2875 BC start of reign for Anubis. We must go to the more contentious, general cosmic year 1, to place these demigods. The fore anchor, is really a ZPE-corrected radiocarbon date on the late Berlin Museum's collection of dinosaurian remains. This would confirm Nama's said festival dino hunt in the year space minus 2946 to minus 2945. The long necks on the lions, which are displayed on his famous first said festival palette, give this notion credence, and therefore confirm his 70 years of reign, given that a hunter needs some vigor to bring down such prey, and the second said is an unrealistic benchmark. Nama's time would have been established as much as or more than Cut's Dynasty 1 paper, entitled The Ultimate Dynasty, a new chronology of Dynasty 1 of Egypt, establishes Nama's kingship. Instead of this easy confirmation, we must now rely on an interpretation of an inscription. Our next stop is chronology. Interestingly, the Greek word chronos is used in Isaiah 23:15. Mistranslated in New International Version, NIV, as quote 15, at that time Tyre will be forgotten for 70 years, the span of a king's life. But at the end of these 70 years, it will happen to Tyre as in the Song of the Prostitute, unquote. We should read it as the span of a king's time or reign. We have established the flood date from Coptic sources. It is also possible that Manichaean and Zoroastrian scribes had derived this knowledge either from the same or other sources. Confirming this date, via the only clear geological signal for the flood geology in the analysis of Tava injectites, we can now start the process of aligning the demigods and the pre-dynastic kings of Egypt to archaic period princes. The literature of archaeology is replete with the thunder and lightning signature for Menes. It aligns us to the long count start for Dynasty 1 in minus 2935. The Chicxulub asteroid swarm, signed in the sky with flashes of lightning and great thunder, brings on an ice age in minus 2900. For more details, see Barry Setterfield at www.barrysetterfield.org. No matter whether the following identification turns out to be generally accepted or rejected, we have assigned Menes to the king that James Henry Breasted labels U in his translation of the Palermo stone. We further assign Nama to the king Breasted labels T. Sometime, about minus 2953 to minus 2949, Nama, who has a CUTSM 74 of 2993 BC to 2919 BC, killed a couple of Egyptosauri, depicted on his famous palette, and called serpopards. In reference to the evidence for Egyptosauri dying out during Nama's reign, we have to involve the World War II destruction of the Berlin Museum, containing the only datable evidence. Historian David Irving has given an account of aircrew from the RAF Bomber Command who accepted an LMC, or lacking moral courage, on their service record rather than take part in great desecrations. And no doubt those who actually bombed this famous archive were not among them.